This is Tito Jackson, who is a mayoral candidate for Boston's 2017 elections. We're here to ask him two questions on Boston Public Schools. So the first question is, what do you believe is the current state of the Boston Public Schools? A, what grade would you give it now? And B, what grade would you give them when Marty Walsh started 4 years ago?
Well, first off, I think the Boston public schools are filled with 58,000, a little bit over 58,000 amazing, awesome young people. I think there are amazing educators in the Boston public schools. Frankly, I just feel that the schools have been underfunded and really under-celebrated. So let's look at fourth grade and eighth grade test scores that rank number one in the nation if we're going to go the test score route. Let's look at the many young people who are succeeding, in particular many young people who have who started out as special education. Actually, about 2 months, I guess a month and a half ago, we went to the valedictorian luncheon. The most amazing thing is 2/3 of the valedictorians didn't speak English when they came to the Boston Public Schools. That's a system that's doing amazing work in spite of, not because of Mayor Walsh. And so what I would say in terms of the grade, I think the one I would actually ask parents and I'd ask young people. I think I am a professional at this, but the people who know best are those who are in the schools, who deal with the education on a regular basis, who are dealing with buildings that are falling down, buildings that are making them as a young person, a student, sick. We know that asthma is absolutely out of control in the Boston public schools, and we know that, in fact, asthma is the reason why most students get kept back. And the buildings, 2/3 of them are built before 1945. And so when we talk about a 21st century education, that's not where we are headed in terms of the buildings. What I would say is the schools 4 years ago when we had Mayor Menino, even in the most difficult economic times, you saw the schools getting funded and supported. Mayor Walsh has turned his back on the public schools. He's categorically walked away from the Boston public schools. And let's point to a couple of facts. And I believe in stating facts. Mayor Martin J. Walsh put forward legislation to increase the number of charter seats. He put forward his own, and yes, he was no on question 2, but he put forward his own legislation at the State House that would take away from funding from the students that he has a responsibility for. That is a fact. And ironically, it's the same day he said that he would not support Syrian refugees, and then retracted that. And so when we look at the 3,600 young people who walked out of school last year, we need to listen to what they said to us. Hear their voice. They said that you are not valuing us. You are cutting our schools. You are cutting critical supports in our schools. Boston Community Leadership Academy lost their leadership teacher. There is not a nurse in every school, and actually we're losing librarians again this year. Last year's budget increased the Boston Public Schools by $18 million and the police overtime budget by over $30 million. Overtime alone. That says what we value. This is at the same time, this is the same mayor who put forward the Olympics, same mayor who put forward IndyCar, same mayor who wanted to give General Electric a helicopter pad. On the same night that they were proposing closing the Mattahunt School in Mattapan. Literally, I was at this helicopter meeting letting them know how stupid this idea was and what an affront to it was to the city as a whole, the South Boston community and the business community. But I had to leave and go to the bowling building to try to defend and keep the Mattahunt School in Mattapan open. Mayor Walsh, he closed it. And so what I would say is that we are, in spite of I would also say it's a resilient system. It's a system that has really pushed forward again in spite of what's going on. I think we are less stable under Mayor Walsh because every single year he has cut the Boston public schools. Every single year he has found an excuse to say that our young people are too expensive. And also every single year, what we've seen is year over year cuts to the Boston public schools. So I think that whatever grade that parents and communities give, it becomes lower under a mayor who doesn't actually show that he cares. And in government, the way that you show that you care is this thing called the budget. People can say whatever they want to say, but if there's not the resources attached to it, then there's not actual caring. What we also need to know, this year, 49 schools were cut by $11 million. $950,000 were cut out of the McCormick School in Dorchester. $455,000 was cut out of our only vocational technical school. We live in a world where there's 1.4 million open jobs in computing. And interestingly, 400,000 people are studying computing nationally. So there's 1 million open jobs. And we're cutting the vocational school that could teach our young people many of these skills and talents. There has been an absolute retreat. And the question is, what do we care about? It's $20,000 to educate, $60,000 to incarcerate. Is the question. Do we pay now or do we pay later? I strongly believe in the Boston Public Schools. As mayor of the city of Boston, I will ensure that we fully fund the Boston Public Schools, that we have art and music, a nurse in every single school, that we have a librarian in schools, and that we have a school system and a school district that is budgeted based on need, not some random number that gets pulled down, and that we actually have a career-focused school district. There are many amazing programs like Resilient Coders and Year Up that in 1 year or even 3 months are able to do many amazing things with our students after we had them for 12 years. So I think there's really something to be said about what we can do there. And we also need to ensure that we have an elected school committee. As mayor of the city of Boston, actually, I guess I'm jumping ahead. But as mayor of the city of Boston, I would ensure that we have an elected school committee that has 2 students on it that can vote. One of the most sad affronts to disenfranchisement is the fact that young people, the one young person on the appointed school committee cannot actually vote and is not enfranchised. And by the way, it's the one person that directly affects every single day, and that individual has to sit there for the same amount of time, go to the same amount of meetings, and even though there's adults, actually that individual has to do their homework, unlike the adults that are up there, and that is unacceptable. So I would say that this mayor has weakened our public school system, has stood for policies that has weakened them, and as mayor of the city of Boston, I will ensure that we strengthen, uplift, and have the best public school system for large cities in the United States of America. And by the way, we should be competing locally with all of the other school systems in the state of Massachusetts. We're the first. We need to make sure that we're the best.
All right, thank you. So the second question is, what specifically are you going to do to improve them? A, how many schools are you going to visit? B, what programs would you add or subtract? And C, how much more money, if any, do you think the schools need?
Yeah. So in the Jackson administration, I'm going to visit all the schools. It is I have visited a lot. I actually haven't been able to tabulate. We're actually trying to figure out the actual number. But it's important to listen to the voices of the folks who are on the ground. We live in a world now. Education is interesting because it's the only field that people think they're experts at because they went to school, right? So we've all been on a plane, right? A bunch of us have been on a plane. And just because I have frequent flyer miles doesn't mean I jump into the cockpit and say, hey, I can fly the plane. Education is one of the only fields that you see folks saying, hey, I know exactly what we should do. Well, you know what? In the Jackson administration, you will hear me and see me at every single school, listening to those school communities and understanding from literally the people who we serve, our young people, and by the way, it's the only future we have. The young people are literally the only future that we can point to in Boston, and they are 100% of that future. So we need to listen to their voice. When they talk about food, it shouldn't have taken all of this time to change the food vendor when young people, and I recently, as city councilor, but in the Jackson administration, not only am I going to go listen, I'm going to go eat at the schools. To understand the voices of the young people relative to food and food choice. Understand in the Jackson administration, we will also have a Backpack 68 program. There is a 68 hours between Friday and Monday. A lot of kids don't eat, and we're going to deal with those issues. And so I look forward to going and visiting those schools. What programs would I add or subtract? First, we would, day one, in the Jackson administration, do an equity study of all the schools. There are a vast array of programs, but the question is, what programs are being offered to who? We know that there are people along a continuum of socioeconomic opportunity. So we need to just, from day one, level set to see what's going on. Day two, we need a complete and total ground floor to the top audit of the Boston Public Schools. In the Jackson administration, we will absolutely ensure that we have an accounting and understanding of all of the dollars, the over $1 billion that are in the Boston Public Schools. Around programs that I would add K through 12 computer science. What we've seen from San Francisco, that's a requirement. And as I noted before, it's 1.4 million open jobs, 400,000 people who are studying computing. This is 1 million open jobs, and we have a couple of classes in computer science. I can't imagine taking 1 or 2 classes on something and that be my career. So it's absolutely critical that we get our young people involved in that. In the Jackson administration, you will also see, again, art and music as standard components of education for elementary school students in the Boston Public Schools. In addition, we have to really think about the investment in vocational technical education. We need to invest more and further in vocational technical education. These are the jobs of the future. You would also see in the Jackson administration additional career programming. What we should be really thinking about are structural opportunities with the corporate sector, right? So this is we let many of our friends in the private sector off the hook when it comes to the component of education. We need our friends in the private sector, not only after your GE and you get a $276 million financial aid or incentive package, a golden handshake, to give back $25 million. By the way, I would do that deal in any day and every day, and I think anyone would. I'm not actually disappointed or angry at GE. I'm disappointed at the governor and Mayor Walsh. They're the ones who signed those incentives. What we should have is a direct connection to the private sector, where they're working with schools. Each school should have a partnership with a college and with a company from the private sector. In a Jackson administration, I would make sure that we have both. And how much more money, if any, do you think the schools need? This year, I told you it's $11 million. $11 million. It's $144 million in new revenue in the city of Boston. There's a 4.8% increase in our budget. So for those people who aren't familiar with city budgets, that's a lot of money. And by the way, it's your money. And in the Jackson administration, we will realize that the money that we're talking about is actually not our money. It is your money that should be thoughtfully spent. And so the schools needed $11 million to ensure that the 49 schools that are getting cut don't get cut. I would ensure that this year that would be the case. In addition, I would begin to budget not on an annual basis. The other issue that we have is, I come from the private sector. I worked for Johnson & Johnson. I worked for Eli Lilly. I worked for a startup. No company budgets on a one-year basis, right? So there's 1, 3, 5, and 10-year thought. In particular, a company that has over $1 billion budget doesn't do it on an annual basis. These shouldn't be surprises. Oh my goodness, we don't have the money this year. We know anticipated revenues, and we know that we are in a pretty good economic time. This is the best times. This is the best of times. $7 billion a year in building. This is the best of times. If we can't fund schools in the best of times, then what's going to happen when we have an economic downturn? So in the Jackson administration, we will change the manner in which we budget, and we will be budgeting for the long term, because we need to understand that our schools are really the research and development arm of the economy in Boston. If we don't invest in that, then we will not have what the innovation economy needs. Mind you, there's three things. It needs technology, which is really important. It needs capital. We have more VC dollars per capita than anybody in the country. But it needs talent. And that's the limiting factor here in the city of Boston. And so as mayor, I would invest in programs that really think prospectively, and we would make a financial investment in that space.
All right, thank you. So we'd like to ask you just one more question that actually does not have anything to do with Boston Public Schools. Mm-hmm. And that question is, where do you stand on film tax credits?
Yeah, so I've seen, and I actually haven't looked at these recently, I think the film tax credit has helped to incent job creation in the city of Boston. I believe that the film tax credit has also helped to make more people want to come to the city of Boston. But I also think that it's important to continue to monitor the ROI and return on investment relative to any tax credits that we put forward. But I think the creative industry in the city of Boston is a critical component. It actually brings, in all honesty, there's a movie filmed at Franklin Park, Zookeeper. The amazing thing is, there's a 2-hour movie that says Franklin Park a cajillion times in it. And that is a commercial, a 2-hour commercial that millions of people will see for Franklin Park. So we need to really look at the several-fold bottom line relative to the job creation and the secondary components. What we don't want, though, is that we don't want to end up like many states that continue to try to one-up, or we don't want to race to the bottom, which would mean too much that gets given away to any specific industry. And we've seen many states say, hey, well, Massachusetts had 25%, we'll do 35%, do 40%, we'll do 50%. That we can't move in that direction. So I also think it's really critical that we actually look at the actual return on investment relative to the tax credits. But what I've seen is, personally, and also studies that show that in the Boston economy, that we have seen a great deal of job creation relative to that tax incentive.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. This is Tito Jackson, who is a mayoral candidate for Boston's 2017 elections.
Thank you so much.